Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about the one and only Turbo Coin, right? There are very, very big, massive things happening tomorrow. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, we have the candle close, not only for the month of March, but we also have it for the quarterly candle, right? So January, February, March. Um, the candle is finally closing, and this is very, very good. This is very, very exciting because this quarterly candle, in the context of crypto, has been a disaster for altcoins, right? Not just Turbo, but for altcoins. And for something like Bitcoin, it has been the big retest candle, right? We talk about Bitcoin for just 1 second before we talk about Turbo, right? We can see when we're on a 3 month chart, ladies and gentlemen, that in October, November, December, we created new highs with Bitcoin. We finally broke out from this big, big range to where we're going sideways for months, correct? So, every time there's a big explosion, there has to be some kind of retest if we want to go higher. It is just the name of the game. Now, I do believe generally that, Bitcoin is looking to bottom out, roughly, most likely, between the 80K mark to maybe 76,000. I don't believe we will be heading to these levels over here, right? There's always a small probability, but I truly do believe this is most likely going to be the range. Obviously, we need to see more data, but yeah, look, the 3 month candle is coming to close. Maybe April might dip a little bit, but overall, I expect there to be recoveries. I also don't expect to be going sideways as long as we did this time, right? 7.5 months. I do expect things to speed up. So that's why I expect, April, May, June to kind of at the bare minimum, at least go back to the all-time highs before we have another expansion. So what does that mean? Well, that means we're going to be closer to, ending the typical cycle, and we will be closer to altcoin season, which is very, very important, ladies and gentlemen. You have to realize something like Turbo is not going to strive unless Bitcoin is either A, extremely high, or Bitcoin dominance starts crashing and altcoin season is here. Okay. When we go look at something, we can see the altcoin season index. We're at 18 out of 10 or 18 out of 100. We are still in Bitcoin territory. You understand? Bitcoin is not done. Okay. Bitcoin still needs to create its higher lows and higher highs before things start to shift, right? So we have these highs that we had, a couple months ago, these higher lows that we're creating, and eventually higher highs, and then sideways movement, all that stuff. Not only that, but Bitcoin dominance, we talked about it short term, back up to 64% before we get a minor sell-off, which probably would be, 1 or 2% down before we get a nice push. And once we get that final nice push, and we start breaking, we go into the 70% zone and we start breaking and sell off massively, 5 to 10% from here, and then go sideways the way we kind of went sideways here. That is when we're going to be super close to altcoin season, right? We need Bitcoin to do its cycle. We need altcoin season, the altcoin season needs Bitcoin dominance to do what it needs to do and go to the places it needs to go before we can even consider Turbo starting to explode and expand and, doing crazy, crazy moves. As a meme coin itself, as a project itself, I believe in Turbo. Okay. I genuinely do, right? Turbo obviously has fell off a cliff in terms of its price, but so has every other coin, right? Coins that have a lot of, value in DeFi and security. And we have all these other tokens that are, backed up by big people, like even something like Ondo, right? BlackRock, JP Morgan. I mean, that's respectively levels above Turbo, right? And look, look how much it has gone down in the last, couple of months, right? It has gone down 60, almost 65%, right? Turbo has gone down, sure, roughly 80, 85%, but it's a meme coin. It is a meme coin at the end of the day. I mean, it's more common for meme coins to drop lower and pump harder, when altcoin season's around, when, the altcoin dominance starts dropping. So, it's a double-edged sword, meme coins. But the point is something like Ondo, this fantastic project as we know it, can drop so much, then of course something like Turbo isn't prone to getting dropped. So clearly, like once again, it's not a Turbo issue, it's just the markets. And we see it in the charts. We've seen it with the data. We've seen it here that we're still during the Bitcoin era. Okay, we're not transitioning yet, right? We're very close because we are getting closer to altcoin season. We are closer than further. Okay, the bull run started, a year and a half ago. Things started to recover, everything, yada yada yada. But Bitcoin still has, completing the lower, sorry, the higher lows, right? The higher lows, and then it still has to create the higher highs, and then we still have to, like I said, once again, Bitcoin dominance needs to start selling off before we could really be like, okay, now everything's going to start pumping. Okay, and that's just the reality. That's just the reality of markets. We cannot change the reality. We never will be able to change the reality. We cannot speed up anything, right? We can only be patient and wait for things to play out, right? Personally, me, I will be looking to dollar cost average turbo a little bit more, right? Right now, I may consider buying a little bit more. And if it does go a little lower, all right, let's go on the weekly, potentially down to, let's see this area over here, 0.0015. Then I will also do my final bags. Now, just to note that turbo is not my biggest holding. It'll never be my biggest holding. It is my biggest meme coin holding, but in terms of the actual portfolio, it only, like, as of right now, it makes roughly 10%, 10 to 12%. I don't know an exact number. It used to be at 18, then it went to 15%. Now it's like 10 to 12 because I've been stacking, other coins, right? Other coins like Caspa, Render, AKT, a bunch of other coins that I believe will do very, very well this cycle. So, and I'm not big on meme coins generally speaking. There are a few exceptions, and I think Turbo is probably the best for your buck in terms of risk and reward. And then something where you can get probably slightly less risk, but way less reward would be something like Bonk. But other than that, I stay away generally speaking. Okay, I stay away, stay away, stay away, or have very, very minor positions. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, once again, if we want things to really, really be confirmed that we are in bullish territory, once again, we have to reclaim the 0.0032 area, right? It's not an if, it's not, maybe, it's a must. Okay, it is a must, right? If we do not reclaim this area, then we will not be seeing fast recoveries. The thing is, though, I do believe we will recover this area. And once we do, we will recover very, very fast to 0.0078, okay? That is what I truly believe, and that is what I truly believe will happen. Remember, most coins at the bare minimum have at least some type of major double top. So even worst case scenario, if things did not go our way, let's say we had a sour ending to Turbo's run, right? If we did something like this over the next few months, worst case scenario, I would see Turbo topping out before it would actually die, like this, right? Worst case scenario. But I think we will have a great altcoin season because Bitcoin dominance is going to be really high. Bitcoin is going to be the highest it's ever been, probably roughly 2 to 2.5 times higher than the last all-time highs from last cycle. And last cycle, altcoin season and meme coins went absolutely nuclear. Let's not forget that, okay? Let's not forget that. So really, really optimistic about this coin, right? In the last 24 hours, a little bit more volume because, we are in a weekday, 135 million in market cap, ranked 260 holders. Actually, we did pretty much hit an all-time high of 53,181, which still makes me believe that when things start going green consistently, we will be flying with holders, hundreds of holders a day, up to thousands of holders a day. That is what I still truly believe. If we are still growing at the very bottom, imagine what's going to happen when we start recovering, when we start getting to all-time highs and start having bigger and better pumps. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.